Unborn and the Second Amendment, and to rebuild the economy again after beating the coronavirus. Joe Biden responding in real time with a series of social media posts during the president's speech, tweeting the speech is yet another reminder of what's at stake in this election. A crowd of protesters gathered across the street from the White House, blaring music and air horns, trying unsuccessfully to disrupt the speech. Afterwards, tempers flared briefly.
What appeared to be a fight, and that obviously drew the attention of law enforcement, and they were there quickly. I did note that there were at least 3 people that were detained as they sort of had to pull them out of the fight. There was a lot of bottle throwing, and law enforcement handled it relatively easily.
Fox's Kevin Corke. The president heads right to the campaign trail with an appearance scheduled Friday in New Hampshire. Over the weekend, he will tour storm-damaged parts of Louisiana and Texas. What was a Category 4 hurricane 24 hours ago is now Tropical Depression Laura moving through central Arkansas. A change in leadership is coming to one of America's strongest allies. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has reportedly decided to resign over his declining health. He's been battling ulcerative colitis for years. Prime Minister Abe is 65. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Watching. The weekend shooting of Jacob Blake triggering more protests Thursday from professional athletes. The NBA postponing another day of playoff games, and several baseball games were called off as well.
The Texas Rangers and Oakland Athletics the first to postpone their game Thursday in protest of the Jacob Blake shooting. The New York Mets and Miami Marlins discussed sitting out Thursday as well, caught in what appeared to be some controversy over scheduling, according to leaked audio from Mets GM Brody Van Wagenen. Well, in fact, the Mets and Marlins would have a 42-second moment of silence at Citi Field, draping a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on home plate before vacating the diamond. The Washington Nationals and Philadelphia Phillies would also postpone their game Thursday, as well as the Boston Red Sox and Toronto Blue Jays, the Colorado Rockies and Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Minnesota Twins and Detroit Tigers. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Federal prosecutors have filed charges against 74 people involved in the ongoing Portland protests, including assaulting federal officers, damaging federal property, and arson. And a protester in Seattle has been charged with trying to burn down a police station.
19-year-old Desmond David Pitts from Alaska has been charged with arson, according to the Western District of Washington U.S. Attorney Brian Moran. He said David Pitts set an intentional fire this past Monday night in an organized, pre-planned attack. He's apparently caught on surveillance tape trying to light a bunch of trash on fire just outside the Seattle Police Department's East Precinct. Moran says this is the 4th person to be federally charged for criminal conduct that he says went way beyond protesting. David Pitts is a somewhat well-known protester in Anchorage. Police there shot and killed his younger brother earlier this year. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A federal judge in Washington state is giving the Trump administration and the U.S. Postal Service 10 days to turn over records and information about service changes, which critics say could undermine mail-in voting in the November election. More than 20 states, including Washington, had filed lawsuits over the changes. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Hafa Dade, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm going to say that same thing next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, ad infinitum. I'm going to keep saying that as long as I have a breath left to say it. If the Second Amendment were ever important during my life, it is really important right now. The right of the people to keep and bear arms is necessary, or found to be necessary, or the Supreme Court says it's necessary, because people have a right to defend themselves in their homes. And given current events, I think everyone can see the importance of that right now. Next, I go from here to Zemi Ikotny, which is... Zemi Ikotny is the local equivalent of Meet the Press, except it's a lot better, if I do say so myself.
I concur.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jose. I thought I could count on your support on that one.
Always, Bob.
I usually start out by beating up on the Daily News for running something that has almost nothing to do with Guam, usually boilerplate from USA Today or Gannett News Service. The Daily News has not run a local editorial for months. I don't know if they're on strike down there or if they're just not interested in what's going on in our community, but there are no editorials. Today they ran an editorial called Nothing for Granted, and I'm going to take some time to read it because it ties into something I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on. And this is what it says. Voting now is as critical as it was 100 years ago. Well, you know, I don't know that you have to read that in the newspaper. I kind of knew that before I started on this editorial.
Oh, I was just learning something new today.
Yeah, well.
That they didn't know that.
I guess. Listening to speeches at America's presidential nominating conventions this month in the midst of a global pandemic responsible for the death of more than 177,000 Americans, I am reflecting on David Foster Wallace' quote from Consider the Lobster. This is written by a lady named Tory Burch. Tory is the executive chairman and chief creative officer of the fashion label Tory Burch, LLC, and founder of the Tory Burch Foundation to Advance Women's Entrepreneurship. So you can see they called out the big guns for this one. Yeah, so Tory says, I am reflected on David Foster Wallace' quote from Consider the Lobster. Have you ever read that book, Jose?
And no, I don't think so.
You know, I haven't either. I feel kind of embarrassed to admit it. It's, you know, it's kind of like one of those things like Tom Sawyer that everybody should have read once in his life, right? In reality, there is no such thing as not voting. You either vote by voting or you vote by staying at home and tacitly doubling the value of some diehard's vote. Well, in a sense, that's true. You know, I hear all this talk about, well, let's get the vote out, you know. We want everybody to go to the polls. Well, I got a confession to make. I don't buy into that. Because the fewer the people, the smaller number of people vote, the more weight my vote has. So if we have 1,000 eligible voters and every one of them goes to the polls, including me, my vote is 1/1000th of the total. But if every one of them stays home except for 5, my vote is 20% of the total. So I value my vote, and I'm a little bit snobbish in that regard because I have this idea that when people go to vote, they ought to know what they're doing. You know, they ought to be engaged and interested enough to have some idea of what they're doing, what the election is about, who the candidates are, and what the candidates are about. Not a situation like, are you going to vote today? Yeah. Well, who are you going to vote for president? Oh, I don't know. Who's running? No.
Please don't vote.
Yeah. Please stay at home.
Stay home.
Take care of yourself. Yeah. So, but she is exactly right here. If you don't vote, you are tacitly doubling the value of somebody else's vote. This quote is a frightening reality check at this precise moment in history and adds meaning and context to our celebration of the centennial of women securing the right to vote. The 19th Amendment may have been ratified a century ago, but the movement was born before in 1848 at a women's rights convention in Seneca Falls, New York. For years, women organized, went on hunger strikes, and protested. The women's suffrage amendment, and I got to interject here for a second. The women's suffrage amendment, you know, people talk about, well, women got the right to vote now. I think it's really important to actually read what the Constitution says. The Constitution, the 19th Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. So there's no affirmative right granted here. And as I have attempted to explain on other occasions, the Bill of Rights is not a gathering of positive rights. It's a group of negative rights. It doesn't tell you what you can do. It doesn't tell you what you can't do. They tell you what the government cannot do to you. And this is an example. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Now, here's an interesting historical footnote. Women voted in the election held in the state of Wyoming in 1890. Yeah. So it was a matter of what states, a matter of state law until the 19th Amendment came along. I believe other states beside Wyoming allowed women to vote before 1920. Now, once again, the language, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. But, you know, in 1919, when Congress dealt with this, it was a whole lot easier then than it is now. Because when the Congress passed the 19th Amendment, we only had 2 sexes.
That's true.
Let me try that again, Jose.
Yes, please.
You know, in 1919, when Congress passed the 19th Amendment, it was a whole lot easier then than it would be now, because in 1919, we only had two sexes. Ah, there you go. All right. You got to keep your finger near that button, Jose. You're going to get to use it a lot. Okay. So, let's see. The Women's Suffrage Amendment was first introduced in Congress in 1878 and reintroduced for years until it was finally approved by the House and Senate in 1919. It won ratification from the required 36 states on August 24, 1920, and that ratification was certified on August 26, 100 years ago, on what's now called Women's Equality Day. It wasn't until 1924 that Native Americans were considered citizens with voting rights, and it took decades more for them to win the vote in each state. Now, I got to stop and explain here. If you look at the United States Constitution, at Article 1, Section 8, I believe it's even the second paragraph, Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. So at the founding of the country, Indian tribes were recognized as separate sovereigns. If they were separate sovereigns, well, it didn't necessarily follow that they would be part of the body politic in the United States. Here's another interesting fact. 1924, that same year, was the first time that there was a presidential election in the United States in which no non-citizen voted. Scrape through the Constitution and you'll find no language in the U.S. Constitution that says that you have to be a United States citizen to vote. So all the way up through the presidential election of 1920, non-citizens were permitted to vote in some of the states. It was a matter of state law. So when it says it wasn't until 1924 that Native Americans were considered citizens with voting rights, well, it's kind of true, but it's not accurate. And then we go on, and black women, and by the way, black has a capital B now. We've changed the rules of capitalization so that the color black, when it refers to people, has to be capitalized. I don't think brown, white, the other colors, I don't think they have to be capitalized. And black women, particularly in the South, faced additional tests, taxes, and outright violence, all designed to suppress their votes until Congress passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Again, this is misleading. This wasn't because they were women. It was because they were black. The same thing happened to black men and women. That's why I'm saying this kind of leads into something I'm going to talk about a little later on. In 2020, a century after the 19th Amendment was ratified, the first woman of African American and South Asian descent is vying for the vice presidency of the United States. I am deeply moved by this, regardless of politics. I'm not moved at all. Again, I'm looking for people that are really good at doing the job. And Joe Biden pretty well closed that door when he said when he was in the process of selecting his vice president. He didn't say, I'm going to look for someone who I would have great confidence in the ability to succeed me should I not finish my term or should I be disabled. He didn't say, I'm looking for someone to help me carry the burden of being the chief executive of this country. What he said was, I'm going to choose a woman, and then later on it was, I'm going to choose a black woman. So this is not a good sign either for the way we do business in the United States, for our political future, and it's not a good sign for women. You know, unless a woman wants to advance the proposition that some position should be held open to them simply because they're women. She goes on to say, when I vote this November, I will think about what my vote means. I will cast my vote for my children, for my family, for my community, for all the communities in America today who are in pain, overlooked, overworked, underpaid. Now, she's not really telling us who she's going to vote for, but I think I can kind of figure out who she's not going to vote for. Democracy is a system that requires active participation. Our country did not begin with the reality of equality for most of its people, but it did start with a dream. Let's seize the opportunity to be heard, protect our constitutional rights, and move forward until we can say that all Americans are afforded equal rights and access to justice under the law. There is no such thing as not voting. Well, she had a good message about, not voting, and but of course, she couldn't resist the temptation to turn it into identity politics with a strong leftist slant to it.
To me, that's an example of what she was talking about in the beginning. Who should stay away from the voting, the polls.
Exactly. Right. You're right, Jose. Okay, then let's go on to the Post. And, the Post has done some pretty good things here lately, but today is not one of those days. The first three words disqualify the Post for a blue star today. The title of the Post editorial is Fitness Enthusiasts Got a Welcome Break from Blanket Restrictions. The reprieve should not be abused. Kind of tells you where the editorial is going. Here are the three words that cost the Post the blue star. Thank you, Governor, for allowing reason to prevail over blanket rules that didn't make sense. Why are we thanking her?
She's the one that did it.
She's the one that did it. It's like the old joke about the guy who's sitting on the side of the road with a hammer, beating himself on the head with a hammer. And a police officer comes over and says, "Sir, why are you beating yourself on the head with a hammer? Doesn't that hurt?" "Yeah, that hurts like hell." "Well, then why are you beating yourself on the head with a hammer?" "'Cause it feels so good when I stop."
Yeah.
That one was a snare drum, Jose.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm no musician.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, because it feels so good when I stop. So, the tactic then would be for the governor to do have all of these draconian restrictions that everybody just hates, and then remove them one at a time, so everybody would be, "Oh, I'm so grateful that the governor removed that restriction that I hated so much."
It's like the Stockholm Syndrome.
Exactly. So, I'm not going to spread the rumor that there's a sign down at the governor's office where most of the, kind of like around the water cooler where most of the employees congregate. I'm not going to spread the rumor that says there's a sign there that says the beatings will not stop until morale improves. There you go. But it's kind of the same philosophy here. Thank you, Governor, for allowing reason to prevail over blanket rules that didn't make sense. How about, Governor, it's really screwed up, and now you unscrewed. Try not to screw up again. On Thursday afternoon, Governor Lulian Guerrero reversed her administration's ban on exercising in parks and beaches. Now, if there's no ban on exercising in parks and beaches, you know what I'm wondering, Jose? I'm wondering what's going to happen to the Chiefs task force. Are they going to come sweeping down Are they going to come sweeping down on the beach, hoping to find gatherings of 2 or more people? Yeah. Okay, the editorial says individuals can once again go to beaches and parks only for individual fitness without having to face the risk of getting a citation for violating the governor's stay-at-home executive order. The ban last week on individual fitness at parks and beaches didn't go well with a lot of our fellow Guamanians, who, while many understand the need for tighter restrictions on public movement, questioned why they couldn't exercise outdoors in beaches and parks for wellness of both body and mind. The lifting of the restriction on individual exercises in beaches takes effect on Saturday. The governor did make it clear in her press conference Thursday that people who gather at beaches and parks for social rather than individual fitness will face police enforcement. That answers the question. That's where the chief's task force comes in. Police enforcement. Yeah.
It's the name.
Yeah. Again, parks and beaches are still closed. Don't think that because now you can, as an individual exerciser, run at the beach or run at the park, that it's open, the governor said. I have instructed our police officers to make sure they patrol the area. Well, they may not be out catching bank robbers, but by gosh, they're going to be patrolling the beach. As we enter the second week of the new stay-at-home order, the governor has also exempted banks, real estate companies, vehicle sales, auto repair shops, and construction activities. These activities, when paused last week, caused hardships. There were individuals who couldn't cash their paychecks, and there were auto and home repairs that were urgent but couldn't get done. Was it you, Jose, that was telling me about the guy whose tire disintegrated and he couldn't get it repaired? Somebody was telling me about that.
Yeah, that wasn't me, but I've heard something like that.
Yeah. Guy's driving along and his tire, and he can't get his tire fixed. So you got to drive around on the rim to show that he's complying with the stay-at-home order, right? No one should be barbecuing or holding parties at the beaches and parks. Our Wuhan virus numbers are concerning. We have surpassed more than 1,000 cases as of Wednesday, and 700 of those cases were added this month alone. That shows that there's been a lot of socializing, even with the pandemic and pandemic restrictions. A lot of socializing. I know 3 people that tested positive for that virus that have a kind of a relationship with one another. I wonder if they were complying with the regulations. I'm talking about the governor, her son, and the lieutenant governor.
In all due respect, the most recent people who passed away were not socializing when they contracted COVID.
That's for sure, yeah. And the latest death attributed to COVID, again, was dead on arrival at the hospital. So it kind of goes back to something that Andrew posted the other day. Andrew said that he had a situation where a distraught man was so distraught, he committed suicide by jumping off Two Lovers Leap. When he hit the water, a shark came along and devoured his entire body except his nose. Police divers were able to find his nose in the water. They stuck a swab up his nose, and he tested positive for the Wuhan virus. That's another Wuhan virus death.
Chalk it up.
Yeah, cut up. Okay, I could go on with this editorial, but it's not a very good story. Okay, we gotta take a break here, and let's see, after the break, I'm gonna come back to R. James, R. Carl, and another Joe.
You've
got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are back again on Tall Tales. I've got 3 callers here. Their names are Shemp, Larry, and No, that's not quite right, is it, Jose?
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Okay, starting. Starting out with R. James. Good afternoon, R. James.
It's all right, Bob. I was always kind of partial to Shemp myself, actually.
He was my favorite, actually.
Yeah, same here. So.
Yeah.
Hey, let me relate 3 things to you just real quickly that are sad and kind of reflect our situation in this particular point in our time. Our right to vote freely, fairly, transparently, and without fear of reprisal, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are all woven together so tightly that I just chalk them all up as identical triplets. Okay, if you don't have the Second Amendment, you won't have the First Amendment or the right to vote for very much longer after that. Okay, the second thing that I would like to relate is the governor puts everyone under a 100% lockdown, but doesn't put a 100% moratorium on food that has to be purchased, rent that has to be paid, mortgages, loans, car payments. If the governor would do a 100% moratorium on having to pay for pretty much anything, then it might not be perfect, but it might be a little bit easier to swallow. But I doubt very seriously that's going to be a non-starter for her, because she's interwoven too closely to one of the major financial institutions here in our territory that wants all of their money back, which leads into the third and the last thing that I'm going to relate to you, which was very sad. As I stood in line this morning for an extended period of time waiting for an office to open, probably about 20 minutes actually, the young man standing in line behind me was furiously on the phone, punching redial just as quickly as he could, and he finally got an answer. And for part of the conversation, it was on speakerphone, so I actually heard both sides of this conversation. Evidently, this young man has had a unemployment claim in for, I guess, over 2 months now, has not received a penny because of some kind of a glitch or a request for additional information that he keeps sending and sending and sending, but he hasn't received 1 penny of his PUA unemployment benefit. And as I heard him take it off speakerphone and started talking very seriously to this woman that he was speaking to, He was explaining to her that he had just withdrawn his last $50 to go to the grocery store to buy some food. And that was exactly the line that we were standing in this morning waiting for the grocery store to open up. He was standing in line with his last $50 to buy some food, and he had already explained to this woman that he hadn't had a penny come in for almost 2 months, hadn't received any replies or any updates for his claim, and that his landlord was threatening to kick him out. Now, how sad does this really have to get for everybody to start opening their eyes to what's going on with this very, very sad situation? Food for thought, something for everybody to chew on, because the longer this goes, the more it happens, the more we get conditioned to this. The next time it might be you instead of him standing in line explaining this to somebody at an agency office that, I'm not going to say that they don't care, but they're powerless. They can't do anything, and they certainly can't do anything quick enough to really make any difference. Just some food for thought, Bob.
Good points, James. Thank you very much for calling.
Yep, have a good one.
Okay, so let's see. I had Shump, Larry, and Mo on the phone, so I guess next in line is Larry, also known as R. Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. So
I think I need to change that to the most dangerous stooge in the room.
That was deserving.
Hey, very good. That's why you're the most dangerous man. You understand my warped sense of humor, Carl, and you can play off it. That's why you're the most dangerous man in the room.
I'll tell you, Jose's coming into his own. He's made me laugh out loud. That nyuk 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 line was just classic. I really cracked up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just had to comment regarding this strategy of cutting the puppy dog's tail off a quarter inch at a time. This beach thing, it's progress. I mean, now they're letting one person on at a time. You can't go with anybody else. Don't even think about taking your wife or your kids to the park.
Or you're a chakma. No.
No one like that, but you can go alone.
Uh-huh.
So we're making progress, little by little. Eventually, it'll be, okay, you bring your wife, and we won't fine you $1,000. And many of these people, at one point it was over 30,000 people were unemployed. So one of these poor unemployed schmoes goes down to the beach, and he has the audacity to bring his wife along or his kids to unwind and decompress because of all the stress going on, and he gets fined a few $1,000. I don't know if it's $1,000 for every person there, but where are they supposed to pay for this? Is Bank of Guam going to give them a loan so they can pay it off over time? One of your competing talk show hosts, I won't remember who, but I heard him talking about
Rush Limbaugh. Was it Rush? Was it Rush or Sean or?
No, Rush is no competition to you. But one of your local competition was talking about, with great enthusiasm about finding anybody who dared to violate this mandate, and get together with family, in a group. And again, I ask, how are these people supposed to pay this fine? Now, maybe to the political class, $1,000 is no big deal. Or those who have retired from a long, illustrious political career, that's no big deal. $1,000. But that would really hurt me personally. I'd be almost in tears. If I got fined $1,000. So there just seems to be kind of a disconnect. With instead of educating the public and persuading them what the right things are, there's a tendency to take the easy path and just use force and threat of violence or, financial violence to your pocketbook, in order to get compliance. So they've taken the easy way out, you know, in this matter, and it's really a shame because so many people are in dire circumstances because of their policies. And another irony, which James Howard has pointed out in one of his posts, is that Gov Guam has the largest cluster of COVID. And I imagine behind the scenes there's a lot of violations of these, you know, this mandate, this ongoing mandate. And ironically, you pointed out yourself that there's three of the most famous cases are the higher-ups in government, you know, our governor, lieutenant governor, and I forget, there's one more. Oh, yeah.
Lieutenant Governor's son.
Oh, yeah, the lieutenant governor's son and Will Castro.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this continues to expand.
Governor's son. The governor's son.
Yeah,
the governor's son.
The governor's son, yeah. So it's the governor, the governor's son, the lieutenant governor, all of whom are as you were, Democrats, and Will Castro, who is, yeah, they're all Democrats.
Yeah, but there's that irony, you know, and I've seen many stories, you know, of the political elites, not only on Guam but also in the States, preaching one set of requirements to the public, and behind the scenes violating those mandates or those rules, you know. So
just like, Carl, as an example, remember the famous poker party in Humatak? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
What was the final disposition there? You know, there were pictures of people. I had a long series of FOIAs going back and forth with Janella, who came out and had some really strong language when the picture surfaced, but couldn't identify anyone in the picture when it was all over. So that was okay. Yeah, well, anyhow, go ahead with what you're saying, Carl.
Yeah, but that's why, you know, it's important for the public to call out the political class, the people who we've entrusted with power, because if they're not called out and this isn't questioned, it's just going to keep expanding and getting worse. So initially, it was supposed to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and that was over 150 days ago. So this just 1 week or just 2 weeks, you know, we've heard that before, and it just never ends. And as you mentioned, James, that just called in, gave the worst example I've ever seen of how this thing has affected. I mean, I literally winced when I heard his description. This poor guy, you know, that James was listening to in this conversation, he was down to his last $50 in his bank account. You know, that's just the saddest thing, the saddest example I've ever heard. But a lot of people can't relate because the governor has made it so there are two classes of workers. You know, she's roped off a certain section because they're you know, a large group of voters. I mean workers, and you know, so she wants to make sure that she knows, you know, who's got their back at the you know, upcoming election. But she can't relate because the policymakers, you know, in the legislature and the governor's office, and a big segment of government haven't missed any paychecks. They don't know the absolute misery of having car payments show up, your landlord requesting rental payment, or you're going to kick you out, your mortgage showing up, and
But Carl,
you're empty.
They're under strict orders to say every morning when they first get up and every night before they go to bed, they're forced to say, we're all in this together.
Yeah. I have no problems with people in the government who are necessary employees, you know, the essentials, getting paid. That's not a big deal. But in the private sector, you know, if we don't work, we don't get paid. You know, and the private sector is, you know, paying a big chunk of the taxes that make this even possible, either taxpayers here on Guam or or in the mainland, the federal dollars that come over and fill our government coffers. So anyway, I just wanted to point out some of those discrepancies that we're having to deal with.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Okay, so let's take a short break, and then I'll come back to Mo.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are back again on Tall Tales. We got about 14 more minutes till that big halftime show that we're all looking forward to. And I started out with 3 callers, Shemp, Larry, and Mo. And I've chatted with Shemp and Larry. Now it's time to put Mo on the line, also known as Another Joe. Good afternoon, Another Joe.
Uncle Bob. Mo. Who came first, Mo, Shem or Mo?
Shemp, Larry, and Mo. Yeah.
Shemp or Curly? Curly came last?
Well, Curly died, and he was replaced by Shemp.
Oh.
Yeah, and I always like Shemp better than Curly anyhow. And ironically, Shemp and Mo were brothers. Their last name was Howard.
Oh, okay. So, one of my favorite episodes was Niagara Falls. Verily, I forget the names, but step by step, and then his dad went crazy. I don't know if you ever saw that episode. Niagara Falls.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So what I called about actually was I was going to poke fun. You're talking about this whole fiasco with the government, and I think we're still waiting for governor. The word of the governor, whether she's going to sign or veto the bill.
She signed it.
And
she signed it
already?
early this morning, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking, man, 35th legislature. Let me try my best impression here, Uncle Bob. Hi, 35th legislature. You have been very bad. But the good news is, we only have a few more months to worry about the 35th making decisions, right?
Ray said it's the worst legislature he's ever seen. He hasn't seen as many as I have, but I would still concur with him.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if there's going to be any lawsuits. I think you're mentioning that in past shows, but I kind of wonder once the voters start figuring out that we're not sure. I think then the ballots are going to stay sealed in the vault, never to be opened, or they'll be disposed of. What is the protocol about?
I think they're going to get some of the environmental wackos to take them and bury them up at MAGA.
Okay.
Yeah. Or MAGA, yeah, something like that, because 200 years from now, archaeologists are going to want to discover those ballots to see exactly what was going on during the 35th Guam legislature.
So I think we have to keep track of them even now. Like, we have to get on their case and say, hey, do you have everyone trained that you need? Are you sure? Because that was the basis of this, right? Bob, they didn't have enough trained officials.
That was one of the arguments made against postponing, or against having the election. They don't have enough trained officials.
That was the main reason that the GEC brought it up to the attention of the legislature.
Go ahead.
So if that was the only reason, then this all could have been avoided if they had just got on the governor's case to start training them like a month or two earlier.
This whole exercise is a classic example of, I don't know if you've ever seen that sign that says PLAN, P-L-A-N, ahead, A-H-E-A, and then there's not enough room for the D, so it has to put below the word. Yeah, there's just no planning here at all. None whatsoever. Let's just cruise along and react to things as they happen.
It's terrible, and I don't know how the voters are going to look at this, but it's a majority Democrat legislature. All you listening, tall tale nation out there, it's a majority Democrat legislature. Just think about that.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, but they had 12 people vote, so that wasn't a majority of Democrats that voted, though. There was plenty of Republicans on that voted for yes on canceling.
Yeah,
keep that in mind. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm going to get into that later on.
How many Democrats altogether voted for it?
I'm going to get into that later on in the card, another Joe.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry. Okay. It's really disappointing. And, I think also it's going to reflect on between now and the 22 election for governor. A lot of people are going to, there's a lot of fodder for the cannon fodder, so to speak. There's a lot of fuel here, and go ahead, go on.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Another Joe.
All right. So anyway, so I don't have anything else to add to that. I'm just really disappointed. I was hoping that people would think about this carefully, because you can have the same exact conditions right before the general election, and then what? I mean, have they said that? Well, the governor's mobilized.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that in the card, another Joe.
Oh yeah, come on. I'm going to let you get to it, and I'll just keep listening. Thanks for your time.
Okay, another Joe. Thanks for calling, Shemp, Larry, and Mo. Okay, so let me pick up the card here and see what I got next. I've got about 7 minutes before the halftime show. I, of course, start out with Tina, and Tina is now back to 1. She's gone one whole day without calling the legislature into special session and waiving public hearing requirements. So I've got Tello versus Tina. This is a doubleheader, Tello versus Tina, and Leland versus the Office of the Attorney General. I've got the 19th floor versus the primary. I've got quarterbacks versus the primary. I've got social justice warriors versus Akimoto. That's a nice one. And this is a takeoff from yesterday's Magagaga versus Jana Manglotnya. Then I've got Underwood versus Castro versus Mike San Nicolas. And then Pinehoff versus Gov Guam, if you were listening to Ray's show this morning. And then some holdovers from earlier calendars. Calvary Chapel versus Lou, Ken versus Personnel Matters, Weir versus the U.S. Territory. So let me start out with Tello versus Tina. I've got 3 items on the card that relate to the legislature. The legislature met yesterday, and they voted 12-3 in favor of canceling the primary election. And there are some highlights that I wanted to bring to your attention. And this is a quote from Tello. although I was one of the 2,000 plus voters who voted early in the 2020 primary election, I respect the decision of my colleagues, and I made today based on the information provided by GEC and DPHS. At the end of the day, it's important that we have a safe election. But she added, while Section 3 provided language for GEC to develop rules and regulations for mail-in voting, I believe Bill 391 should focus only on canceling the primary election and that no other provision should be added to ensure that GEC has the time and resources it needs to properly administer mail-in voting. In other words, yesterday I mentioned that Tina's bill is an example of either someone not knowing what she's doing, because the legislature has a rule that deals with germaneness. And the rule says you can't have a bill that has more than one subject. And I explained the reasons for that. There are a lot of good reasons, and Tello seized upon one of them. And of course, it's Tina's bill. So, well, you know, she's the speaker, but it's an absolutely dumb way to proceed, to have a bill that deals with mail-in voting for the general election, along with a bill that deals with canceling the primary election. On Thursday, the legislature is dealing with canceling the primary election on Saturday. There should be that provision about mail-in voting might be a good idea, might not be a good idea, but it has to be considered on itself, on its own. And it's fortunate that Tello rose up and removed that section from the bill, because it was really bad. A bad piece of legislation, a bad bill, no question about it. The second part of this item on the card is Levin versus the Office of the Attorney General. And I got a lot to say about this. First of all, you remember that at the 11th hour, Tina never thought about seeking the advice of counsel before she ever introduced her bill, which would be a really good time to do it, especially since the legislature has its own lawyer called legislative counsel. So after the bill is already introduced, Kelly Marsh Titano writes to the Attorney General and asks, do we have the ability, can we cancel the primary election? And a couple of other questions. The Attorney General's proper answer should have been this: ask your lawyer. Don't ask me. You have your own lawyer. You are a separate branch of the government. You're called the legislature. I'm in the executive branch. I advise elements of the executive branch. I defend parts of the executive branch. My chief prosecutor prosecutes parts of the executive branch if necessary. So for one thing, I don't want to put myself in a position after I've given you advice to see that same advice coming back to me in litigation and have to disqualify myself because I gave you advice, even if it was good advice. Okay, let's break for the halftime. I'll come back to the Attorney General after the big halftime show.
is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The conventions are over. Now the race is on. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump wrapping up the Republican National Convention last night with a speech on the South Lawn of the White House in front of a crowd of several hundred people, most of them without masks.
President Trump, during his acceptance speech for the Republican presidential nomination, promised that America's economy will come roaring back and made a bold promise to the country.
We will have a safe and effective vaccine this year, and together we will crush the virus.
The president warned that Joe Biden, if he's elected, would inflict what he called a painful shutdown on the entire country. The president also addressed the country's racial unrest, saying he's for law and order, and Biden would give in to what he called mob rule.
Fox's John Decker at the White House. Joe Biden responding on social media during the speech, tweeting, among other things, who we are, what we stand for, and who we want to be. It's all on the ballot this November. A short distance away, protesters gathered at Washington's Black Lives Matter Plaza. There's some scuffles there after the speech, broken up quickly by Washington police. 4 people have been shot and wounded in East Portland. Police say they do not believe the shootings are connected to the ongoing demonstrations, which were in downtown Portland on Thursday night. More than 6 dozen Portland protesters have been charged with federal crimes, ranging from arson to assaulting federal officers. An Alaska man has been charged with arson in Seattle. Prosecutors say he tried to set a police station on fire. Japan is bracing for a shakeup in its government. Shinzo Abe, who this week became the country's longest-serving prime minister, says he intends to resign over declining health. After a mixed day on Wall Street, Dow futures are up more than 175 points. Asian markets closing Friday mixed. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
A police officer has been killed in the line of duty in Arizona.
Customs and Border Protection put out a vague release earlier in the day saying they assisted Tohono O'odham police in the Tucson area with arresting someone and that there were injuries. Now, the FBI is confirming a Tohono O'odham police officer has been killed, and they are investigating. Details about what happened or how they happened were not clear, but reports indicate the officer was shot while trying to take the suspect into custody near the Desert Diamond Y Casino on tribal land.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. For the second time in 3 days, the federal government plans to kill a killer later today. Keith Nelson, scheduled to be executed at the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, for the rape and murder of a 10-year-old Kansas City girl more than 20 years ago. A court order blocking his execution was dismissed by the federal appeals court. Israel's military says it has struck militant targets in Gaza, including a weapons manufacturing site, after 6 rockets were fired from Gaza toward Israel. No immediate reports of casualties or major damage on either side following the exchange early this morning. A singer facing child sex charges has reportedly been assaulted in prison.
R. Kelly was attacked by another inmate while in federal lockup in Chicago. His attorney, Stephen Greenberg, released a statement to Fox stating, "We were told that an inmate had attacked R. Kelly at the MCC in Chicago. We received conflicting reports as to the extent of his injuries." Greenberg said he was unaware of any injuries, but said that the singer should be released because his safety is in question. He added, "We should not incarcerate people indefinitely because we cannot provide them with due process." Kelly is awaiting trial at the Metropolitan Correctional Center on racketeering, sexual misconduct, and other charges. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hoffaday, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
$5 foot long. Pile high with veggies. They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are after that big halftime show that we all liked so much. It means we're now in the second half of Tall Tales on the last day of the week. So it's going to be really tough on me to go without Tall Tales for 2 whole days up until 1600 on Monday. But I've made it before. I think I can make it this time, but I'm going to make the best use I can of the last hour here on Tall Tales. Before the break, I was talking about what I think Attorney General Levin Camacho is actually fighting with his own office, with the Office of Attorney General. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the government of Guam. He has the powers of a common law Attorney General. He has the responsibility of giving advice to government agencies. The chief prosecutor is under his supervision. Chief prosecutor prosecutes people who violate the law. The Attorney General has no role as far as the courts are concerned, as far as the legislature is concerned, except the obvious roles. When the Attorney General sues someone, he files papers at the Superior Court. When his chief prosecutor prosecutes someone, the prosecution takes place in the Superior Court. But the Attorney General doesn't write a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and say, you're looking for some legal advice. Let me tell you what the law is on that point. He doesn't do that. The Supreme Court, as you were, the courts, the judiciary has its own lawyers. And I suspect the last thing that they would ever dream of at the judiciary is to ask the Attorney General for his advice on anything, except maybe how he runs his own office. And the same thing is true with the legislature. The legislature is a separate, co-equal branch from the executive branch. The Attorney General has no role in the legislature. When senators ask for opinions, the Attorney General could say, you got your own lawyer, especially when the question is about a bill, not even a law. So, because of a bill, of course, we all know a bill as introduced and a bill as passed can be very different things. So the Attorney General is just setting himself up for problems by answering requests for opinions from members of the legislature or from the whole legislature. If the Attorney General is going to continue to advise the legislature, then my advice to the legislature would be get rid of your legislative council. You're spending money for nothing because you're getting your advice from somebody else. The Attorney General ought to keep his office clear from what goes on at the legislature, because the Attorney General may be litigating bills that are signed into law, and he wants to not have any conflicts of interest or even apparent conflicts of interest. What the members of the legislature, well, I know what they're thinking, or maybe I don't know what they're thinking, but I expect that I do. And obviously they don't understand their own role. If I were a senator, perish the thought, the last thing I would countenance would be asking the Attorney General for an opinion on my bill. Legislature has its own lawyer. And right now the legislature has a member who is a lawyer, Therese Terlahi. So Therese, why are you putting up with this? Why are you allowing this to happen? Why are you allowing someone outside your body to have an impact on what you do and what you don't do? So another way to look at this is and this is a handy framework for looking at any organization in the government that someone wants to change. How would it work if a bad person were involved? That's why we have criminal laws, to protect us from bad people. So what would happen if we had an Attorney General who wanted to use his office to benefit someone else, like a candidate? So let's say he wants to benefit a candidate, and the legislature introduces a bill like they did here, and they ask for his advice. He figures out what kind of advice would best help my friend, and he gives them that advice. The Attorney General has no loyalty to the legislature as an institution because he's not part of it. He's governed by the ethical rules of the profession, but he's not part of the legislature. So all of this is bad enough. But, you know, for the Attorney General to go to the legislature and participate in a chat with them, unheard of. Can you imagine Bill Barr going over to the House of Representatives when the House is actually in session and having a chat with the members of the House of Representatives or even the Senate? It just doesn't happen. Now, this smart guy over here in the corner is saying, well, he didn't go over there. It was all done on Zoom, so he stayed in his office. It doesn't make any difference whether it was virtual or real. The Attorney General has no business engaging with members of the legislature when they are in session. If the Attorney General's budget is under consideration, of course the Attorney General or some of his deputies and assistants would go and testify on the budget. But to actually get involved in what amounts to the legislative process by having chats with the members of the legislature when they are in session. Do we have the number for Ripley's Believe It or Not, Jose?
No, but
if we can find it, I think we ought to send this off.
They're the Canadian side or the American side? I know that they have one or two up there in Niagara Falls. They're actual museums.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking...
They might clear a spot.
Yeah. Well, probably on both sides. See how it falls, we'll say.
It does play to both sides.
Yeah. So an extremely bad performance on the part of our Attorney General. No performance at all was what should have happened. Legislature's in session. Let them have their session, but don't participate in their session. And Tello, you done good. Try to keep doing it. Okay, so that's that item on the card. Then the next item on the card is the 19th floor versus the primary. Are you there, Jose? The 19th floor?
Do I have 19th floor?
You certainly do. The 19th floor versus the primary, yeah. Here. That's my own sound effects. Yeah.
You giving a script to your phone?
Yeah. This is a article that appeared in the Daily News. Lawmakers vote to cancel Saturday's primary election. And I go to the second page of the article, and there's a subhead there, emotional testimony. And it says, Election Commission Vice Chairwoman Alice Tyrone gave emotional testimony to lawmakers. Now, she's the vice chairman of the Election Commission. And if the name sounds familiar, Alice Tyrone, that's because Alice Tyrone and what was her first name? Orsini lived in the presidential suite on the 19th floor. They were the ones that were in charge of the 19th floor. Yeah. So I guess part of the title of this ought to be There's Life After the 19th Floor. Election Commission Chairwoman Alice Tyrone gave emotional testimony to lawmakers, choking back tears as she urged them to cancel the election. I'm not going any farther than that. And I suppose there will be those who would criticize me for this, but I don't want to see emotional testimony dealing with cancellation of an election. You know, I know some people think, well, you know, if you're going to be a senator, you got to have a heart and et cetera. But I would like to have some cold, hard reasoning go into the process. And if we're making decisions based on emotion, then the chances of making a wrong decision are greatly increased. Emotion is not a good decision-making tool. Alice Tyrone is the vice chairman of the Election Commission. So this is somewhat disappointing, actually, because the election is one of the most important things that happens in a democracy. And we have a rather interesting makeup at our election commission. We have 7 commissioners. And here's a little aside. Sometimes Maria Pangilinan refers to them as the board. There is no board at the election commission. There's a commission. But the 7 commissioners, 3 of the commissioners are chosen by each of the parties. And those 6 commissioners choose a 7th person who, at least in theory, is neutral. I don't think I think elections are too important to entrust to politicians. I could see a board of 7 folks, good and true, with perhaps a single representative from each of the parties on that board. But to turn the whole thing over to the politicians, and we saw this when complaints were made to the Election Commission. the complaints were not decided by a tribunal that was attempting to make good decisions. The matters were dealt with by a tribunal that was avoiding making any kind of a decision. But to wrap this up, I'm not happy when I see a person in a position as important as the vice chair of the Election Commission giving emotional testimony before the legislature. Provide reasoned testimony, logical testimony. If I don't happen to agree with it, I can live with it. But it's very difficult in our society to tolerate a situation where emotional testimony carries the day.
And how do you counter emotional testimony? You can't retort. You can't come back and say, well, you're wrong, or this is what I feel.
No, because you'll just get more emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And to match emotion with emotion only compounds the shortfall. So yeah, it's just not a good way to make decisions. And you spend a little time in court, and you see what sourpusses judges are. I mean, they go to great lengths to avoid having to make decisions based on emotion. And I would hope it's the same way on the Election Commission, but a lot of things I hope for don't happen.
What was that Dragnet quote? Just the facts, ma'am?
The facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Jack Webb, yeah. Okay, our Fred wants to chime in on... Our Fred, do you have some emotional testimony you want to give?
No, only logic, Bob.
Good for you,
You know,
our
me
Fred.
and you. You know, me and you, we only speak logic and common sense.
There you go.
And, you know, talking about the election, it got canceled and all that. You know, and something you said just a few seconds ago triggered a thought. Is how do we let the people running decide on if there's going to be an election? That's just like saying, why doesn't the business community vote on what the BPT rate should be? Right? Think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
We let the people who are in competition decide if there's going to be a game or not, or an election or not. So by the same token, we should get the Chamber of Commerce together and have them decide what the GRT rate should be, not the legislative body. Let the people who are competing for that GRT or paying that GRT decide.
Right.
Yeah, logic and common sense, right?
There you go, our Fred. Do you want to be on the Election Commission?
Oh, no, forget it. I mean, maybe with a new crew, yeah. Yeah, maybe you be the legal counsel. Oh, yeah. I think we make a great team.
Yeah, I think so too, our Fred. Well,
we won't have any emotional, teary-eyed stuff going on. It'll be logic and common sense.
Exactly.
Just wanted to say that, so that makes sense now. Look who's voting on their own election. So,
well, Will Castro is a primary example, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute, our Fred.
Wow. Yeah, no, I don't think anyone said it like that on your show. Did the most dangerous man say it yet?
The most dangerous man in the room, I think he's still taking a victory lap after he got the governor to cave in on the prohibition of using the beaches.
And just for the record, that's 100% true, Bob. There's some people that would want to contend that, but 100% true, it was Carl.
It was our Carl.
It was our Carl.
Yeah, when the governor saw what his quote in the newspaper, that was it.
Yeah. Wow, he is dangerous.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, okay. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, our Fred, good talking to you, as usual.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our Fred. So, so moving on from an emotional 19th floor, I want to talk a little bit about Clint Rigel versus the Organic Act. This is in the same story. This is a Daily News story. Senator Clint Rigel asked if the general election could be delayed. Yeah. asked if the general election could be delayed. When I was going through Tina's bill the other day and being pretty critical of her for including two totally different items in the same bill, contrary to the standing rules of the legislature, one of my comments was that, we look for senators, among other things, to be good at being senators, to understand the procedures that govern activities on the floor, to have some sense of how the Guam Code Annotated works, how the law works, etc., knowing a little bit about what you're doing. But to have a senator ask, and then, of course, he asked the Attorney General, so there I am with the Attorney, the live access Attorney General, right?
I almost gave you a rim shot there, but that's a true story.
Yeah. Senator Clint Rigel asked if the general election could be delayed, but Attorney General Even Camacho, who happened to be right there, said doing so could violate the Organic Act. Wow. To which Rigel said, Organic Act? Organic, does that have something to do with farming? Yeah.
I'll get it.
One would think, and I've made this same comment before, but one would think that when you start out in a government agency, the first thing you would do would be to go online and read the organic statute for that agency. So you'd have some idea what's going on. Like if you're Pika Farrand and the chairman of the Land Trust Commission, you would know that all leases have to be signed by the chairman. This wouldn't come as a surprise to you 2 years after you started. And if you're a senator, you'd think that a senator would at least sit down and go through the table of contents of the Guam Code Annotated and sit down and read the Organic Act, because that's analogous to our local constitution, and have some idea of what it is that governs what you're supposed to be doing. But Clint Rigel asked if the general election could be delayed, but Attorney General Even Camacho said doing so could violate the Organic Act. Okay, going on to the next item on the card. This is quarterbacks versus the primary. Senators this is a story that ran in the Post. Senators on Thursday night voted to cancel Saturday's primary against the backdrop of increased Wuhan virus deaths, hospitalizations, and confirmed cases. The vote was 12-3. The three who voted against canceling the August 29 primary election were Senators Will Castro, Luis Muñoz, and Kelly Marsh. That's what the story says, and I actually have the printout here from the secretary, the roll call, and there's no tight note in there. So let me go through the seventh inning stretch here, and we'll come back and see if we can figure this one out.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile Team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile Team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago. Here we are in the seventh inning stretch, and I'm back to the legislature, but instead of baseball, it's going to be football, because the next item on the card is quarterbacks versus the primary. So I mentioned the three senators that voted against the bill: Will Castro, Luis Muñoz, and Kelly Marsh. Not Kelly Marsh, Titano, but Kelly Marsh. So I wonder if we have an impersonation problem here. So I agree with the no vote. I think that is the correct vote for reasons that I have explained perhaps ad nauseum before, and I'm not going to go into them again. But Will Castro actually has a stake in this. Will Castro is a candidate for Washington Rep. And the Washington Rep portion of the election is the most hotly contested. There are two Democrat candidates, Underwood and Michael San Nicolas, and one Republican, Will Castro. So when we first started talking about canceling the primary, there was a lot of speculation. Well, not having a primary and allowing all three to go to the general election benefits who? My initial reaction was it benefits Castro, because the Democrat vote would be split between San Nicolas and Underwood, and Castro could win. Castro came out and said it doesn't benefit him because he has to campaign against two people instead of one. My wrap-up on that was, regardless of which way you call it, it's the kind of conversation we should not be having after we know who the candidates are going to be, because it casts doubt on the whole election process. But here's Will Castro voting against suspending the primary, going back to my original theory that perhaps Castro thinks that having Underwood and San Nicolas duke it out would favor him because it would split the Democrat vote. Contrary to popular belief, senators cannot recuse themselves from voting. If a senator has a conflict, or what he thinks might be a conflict, his remedy is to ask the body for permission not to vote. That permission is I've never heard of it not being granted or even voted on. It's usually a no objection. But Castro didn't do that. So I don't know if there's a story there or not, but it's something I noticed. Now, there is a story here, and that is that we had quarterbacks. Again, we had Raging Lee was a quarterback. Kelly Marsh or Kelly Marsh Titano, one of them, was a quarterback. And Joe San Augustine was a quarterback. Quarterbacks are senators who, when the roll is called, instead of voting yea or nay, pass. And I've spoken about this a lot. This is a real abuse, allowing senators to pass instead of vote. So the way the standing rules reads, a senator can pass twice and has to vote on the third time around. So if you're, like Judy Wanpat, if your name begins with W, the roll is called alphabetically. So if your name is Mary Torres, you get to vote last. So you get to see what the vote looks like as it comes to you. So people that like to game the system, good blackjack players who can count the cards, pass instead of voting. And I've given some elaborate explanations about this, especially back in the days in the legislature after the Juan Pat 10, where several senators were able to manipulate the system in such a manner that they could have bragging rights for voting to cut back their own salaries, but still keep the money, because by passing and voting strategically, they were able to vote on the right side on bills that failed. So this is how it worked on Bill 391. When the roll was called the first time around, Raging Lee, who was second in the roll call, a very disadvantageous position, passed. Castro voted no. Lee passed. Marsh voted no. Moylan voted yes. Munya voted, Marsh passed. Not voted no, because she's fourth on the list. So the second time around, she would be able to vote. She'd know how to vote. Moylan voted yes. Munya voted no. Tina Munya Barnes voted yes. Nelson voted yes. Rigel voted yes. San Augustine passed. Yeah, so when the vote got to San Augustine, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 yes votes.
What was he waiting for? He already got the AG's opinion.
Well, what he was waiting for, he wanted to be voting on the right side, you see? So he saw that coming to him, there were 6 votes. So if he wanted to vote no, then he would wait till the second time around, figuring there'd be enough votes for the, right? Yeah. So San Augustine passed. Second time around, Lee passed again. That one I can't figure out. And San Augustine voted yes after having passed, wetted his finger, stuck it up in the air to see which way the wind was blowing. He voted yes. So this again brings disrespect to the whole body, because to the uninitiated observer who's just watching this and sees the senator, when it's his turn to vote, the senator says pass. The uninitiated observer is thinking, after all this time on an important question like this, he hasn't made up his mind yet? To the more sophisticated observer who knows how the game is played, it has a sinister dimension to it. Now, I recall that the other day I gave some grades for transparency, and so I guess what I should have done was compare the transparency with the passing here, right? Yeah, maybe I'll do that on Monday.
There's a correlation.
Yeah, see what the correlation is. So, notwithstanding the fact that we had these and after they did this the last time, I sent proposed legislation to Kelly Marsh Titano and suggested that maybe they could introduce this. And it would be really simple. First of all, call the roll in random order. And second, a senator votes yes or no. And if he doesn't vote at all, it's counted as a no. And do away with this process that looks like sort of a legislative 3-shell game where you can never guess under what shell you'll find the P. But she wrote back and she defended herself and she said, I've only done this twice. Yeah. Okay, so much for that one. Next is social justice warriors versus Akimoto. Yeah. This is Vince Akimoto, the doctor, I wouldn't say a regular caller, but an occasional caller to Tall Tales, one who always imparts a certain amount of wisdom when he called. And about 6 months ago, he was installed in the Tall Tales think tank as the part of the medical resource team in the Tall Tales think tank. He has been very vocal about Dr. Jenna Manglotnia, who is the medical director of the Department of Public Health. He's been very vocal about the administration's handling of this whole Wuhan virus pandemic. He has not been complimentary at all. He's been very direct and I think very factual. And I suspect probably is no longer on the governor's Christmas card list. So he was on another network a couple days ago, and he got engaged in a dialogue with another talk, as we would say, another talk show host. I'm not going to say that he's my competition, but another talk show host. And he used a couple of words that are not supposed to be used on the air. Obviously, I can't tell you what those words were because they're not supposed to be used on the air.
I don't have that button.
But he almost everything that he said was very critical of Dr. Jana Manglotnia. And I did a piece yesterday called Maga Gaga versus Jana Manglotnia, where he rebutted what Dr. Jana Manglotnia said. And Dr. Jana Manglotnia was quoted in KUAM and in the Post. And in short, what Jana Manglotnia said was really belittling to the people of Guam. You know, it's all our fault. And this is an example. Dr. Manglotnia is delivering a firestorm of frustration as Guam's front line in the war against Wuhan has failed. Quote, "It's out of control because the people are out of control. No matter what we've done, ultimately it's the front line, which is the community." And she goes on. There comes a point where the governor isn't going to be able to clean up the mess, and so on. It's very derogatory. I am not a snowflake. Never been a snowflake. I never want to be a snowflake. I didn't take offense. But certainly there's enough there for a person who just happens to live here to take offense. That she's blaming the whole thing on us. And when I went through the Maga Gaga versus Jana Manglotnia, I had a pretty adequate rebuttal to everything that she said. And I told you that I would identify that Maga Gaga was a nom de plume and that I would identify that person today. Well, that person was Vince Akimoto, who came back and had a very thorough rebuttal of what Jana Manglotnia said. So what I want to do is I want to concentrate on what Manglotnia said, what Akimoto said. I would like to direct my attention to the issues involved. I don't want to pull an Alice Tyrone and start choking up with emotion. And I would hope others in positions of authority that can make a difference here might subscribe to the same requirements. However, we have an attempt to cancel Dr. Vince Akimoto. This is the cancel culture. And I have this on the list, on the card, as social justice warriors versus Akimoto. And the social justice warriors are the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce.
Woke warriors.
Uh-huh. And I heard Ray read this on his show, and I went to their Facebook, and I found it, and I have it, and I'm going to read it. I think I'm going to take a break first, going down into the home stretch. Carl, I'm going to go into the home stretch from Churchill Downs. I'm going to deal with the social justice warriors versus Akimoto, and then I'll take your call.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont, or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch. It means I got about 14 more minutes to wrap up another week of Tall Tales. So I take you now to social justice warriors versus Akimoto. Here's a statement from the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce in response to Dr. Vince Akimoto's interview on KUAM's program The Link, Thursday, August 27. The Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce is incensed. Do you have a sound effect for incensed?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We're not too emotional here on the point.
Yeah, is incensed by Dr. Vince Akimoto's personal attacks on Dr. Jana Manglotnya, Central Medical Director at the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Dr. Akimoto made disparaging, misogynistic statements about Dr. Manglotnya on KUAM's Link. I'm stopping here right now. Disparaging, yes. Personal, misogynistic. I didn't hear that, but I suspect, in the woke year 2020, that anyone who makes a negative comment about one of the protected identity groups takes on the label that goes with that identity group. So anyone who criticizes someone who happens to be a woman, what CNN would refer to as a person with a cervix, anyone who says anything that's derogatory about a female is obviously misogynistic, because you're not supposed to criticize women. And that's what he did. He used language that was dehumanizing and completely uncalled for. Hate speech. Now there's the marker right there. Hate speech. Anytime you see someone throw the word hate speech around, you know exactly where they're coming from. Over on the left, identity politics, and I've used the example before. I will, on a very slight prompting, say that marriage means a man and a woman united in some kind of civil or sacred ceremony to live together. And I have been told, Bob, that's hate speech. You're a hater. Hater is going to hate. So they're branding what Vince says as hate speech. I branded what Vince said as, straightforward truth-telling, calling it like it is. And if calling it like it is critical of Dr. Jana Manglotnya, well, then you could say, yeah, that's personal. When you criticize Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, You are criticized, and I do that every day. Well, maybe not every day, but I don't expect to be canceled because I'm doing that. Anyhow, they go on to say that's hate speech that would normally be censored by a broadcast station, uttered one day after the centennial anniversary of women's suffrage. Oh my goodness. This goes beyond hate speech. This goes to sacrilege. Akimoto's profanity made it clear that women still have to fight for equality in today's professional environment. Yeah. Let's see if we can get the 10 members of the female members of the legislature, our female governor, the last female attorney general, the manager of Guam Memorial Hospital, the former director of public health and social, you're
running out of fingers there, Bob.
I am. Yeah, let's see if we could get those people involved in the fight for equality. And this is classic feminism, This is not about equality. This is about grievance politics and canceling Dr. Akimoto because he had the nerve to criticize a person who happened to be a female. So women still have to fight for equality, as it is fairly obvious he would not have uttered such derogatory epithets at a male colleague. And there we go. Now, we've been told, we've been educated that we're not supposed to think like that. We're supposed to treat women as equals. But the message here is, if it's a woman, you kind of got to give her a pass. Normalizing this type of language is part of the reason we have such high rates of crimes against women in our community. So foul language causes crimes against women in the community. Well, this pandemic has brought out passionate disagreement from both the medical and business community on how to handle the rampant spread of Wuhan virus. The Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce expects professionals to keep their discourse and dissent civil and productive. Anything less is not helpful to this pandemic situation or to people of our island. Let's stand together let's stand together in anaphemolic. So when someone disagrees with you, the best counter is to say, well, shouldn't we be practicing anaphemolic?
That's another word that nobody's allowed to counter when you say anaphemolic. It's all of a sudden the conversation ends.
Absolutely. That's the first guy who gets to say anaphemolic wins the argument. Yeah. Okay, well, that's enough. I got about 8 more minutes to go. I've got our Carl on the line in the green room. I've got another Joe in the green room. Each of them has already ridden the Ferris wheel once. So I've got Gloria on the line, so I'm going to go to Gloria and tell our Carl and another Joe that if I have time when Gloria and I are finished, you will get a second ride on the Ferris wheel. Good afternoon, Gloria.
Hi, Bob. Good afternoon.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I completely agree with you, and I'm sick of this woman card being played over and over. It's really pathetic if they can't behave as professionals, yet they want to be seen as professionals, and yet when you criticize them, it's a personal attack. It's really a manipulative tactic that many women are guilty of, myself included, probably with a few boyfriends in the past, but it's not fair to the people of Guam. These people are serving in a representative capacity, and I'm sick of these excuses and these squabbles that just get in the way of any actual accountability, transparency, or anything being done for the community, which is suffering right now.
I couldn't agree with you more, Gloria. Right on point.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much for calling and sharing that, Gloria. Yeah, so, yeah, the women's card. Yeah, we want to be treated just like everybody else, unless you do something we don't like, and then we're going to say, but we're women, and you're a misogynist. Yeah. Okay, I've got our Carl and I've got another Joe on the line here. Let's see. I guess I'll take our Carl first and then another Joe. The most dangerous man in the room. Go ahead, our Carl.
I'll try to make this quick, Bob, and leave some time for another Joe. Yeah, it's ironic because if and I could imagine Dr. Akamoto. He's very passionate about what he believes about the hospital and about health care for the island. So I can imagine him saying this to a man, believe me, and I'm sure he has exchanged some words with people in the past who are males, about his disagreement with how they've done certain things. But if it was a man that he said this to, nothing would be said. And it's just ironic, that there's all this talk about, equality, but if something like this happens to a woman, it's all this pearl clutching. And men do pearl clutching too. I've done my share of it. Just one other point. This cancel culture seems to be coming to Guam more and more. I saw something on Facebook recently where there was a rumor that there's talk about boycotting Jeff's Pirates Cove because of Jeff's participation in the peaceful protest to the park lockdown, beach lockdown, et cetera, et cetera. Jeff has been on the island 58 years. His people, he and his staff have saved over 50 people from drowning in the Pirates Cove Bay area. And he's employed hundreds of local residents over decades, over those 58 years since he started his business.
And he's a tremendous...
I just want to get this out there.
He's a tremendous business, Carl. He's a tremendous businessman. He has done a tremendous job as a businessman. He's exactly what we should be looking up to and exalting, not canceling.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to put this out there because a lot of people know Jeff and really highly respect him and love his food, love Jeff's Pirates Cove, so he doesn't deserve this. He does not deserve this kind of treatment. Anyway, I'll let another Joe have some time.
Thank you very much, our Carl. Another Joe, what do you think about this cancel culture that is chiming up in our island here?
Uncle Bob, let me tell you something. Once they started saying it's hate speech, I'm trying to figure out what about it is hate speech. I don't know if it's bad words or what, but there's quite a few younger ladies here on island who don't seem to respect older generation, whether it be male or female. But if you get a younger man that is disrespectful towards older women, oh boy, good luck to him. But the other part where cancel culture, Uncle Bob, that's like Soviet Union, USSR. And when I was a kid growing up, we were trained to oppose that and to be ready to stand against that. So that's sorry I say about that, Uncle Bob. If it was bad coming from the USSR, what makes it good coming from these liberal socialist Democrats?
You're absolutely right. Thanks for calling again. And then I've got our Keith. Keith, you're going to get to wrap up the program.
Hi, Bob. You're recognizing my phone number. I'm not quite sure what that says. Hats off to Gloria, who nailed it. I don't know if you give sort of the blue stars this late in the game, but my hat is off. She essentially stole my thunder almost entirely. Good for you. I just want to sort of end on a borrowed quote. I have a dream that someday my children may grow up in a world where they're measured not by whether or not they have a cervix, but by the content of their character.
A great wind up to the show. Thank you, Keith. I don't know if we can. Weekend, I know we can top this on Monday, but we'll sure try.
Bye-bye.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president accepts renomination. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
President Trump wrapping up the GOP convention last night, telling a crowd of several hundred on the White House lawn.
With a heart full of gratitude and boundless optimism, I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
The president said he will once again rebuild the American economy, which he called the strongest in the world before the coronavirus, and continue to protect the American people, something he said his Democratic opponents cannot do.